The wind howled in sharp, invisible gusts across the bus terminal platform, the kind of cold that bypassed the skin and settled directly into the marrow. The kind of November night in Chicago that made commuters walk faster, chins tucked into scarves, gazes fixed on the concrete, ignoring the metal bench near the far end of the terminal. A small shape lay curled on its side. A girl, maybe 7 years old. Her skin was deep brown, though now it held a terrifying, ashy gray undertone. Her dress was thin, a bright floral pattern meant for warm September days, not for this biting frost. Her legs were bare against the frozen metal. Beside her sat a piece of torn cardboard. Someone had written on it with a thick black marker. The words read, "No one's child." Her eyes were closed, but her body shuddered in rapid, rhythmic tremors. She was not asleep. She was listening. She had been listening for hours now to the rhythm of boots and sneakers slapping the pavement behind her. Work boots, dress shoes, the rattle of rolling luggage. Some of them slowed, some of them paused, but none of them stopped. A woman in a thick down jacket glanced at the bench as she hurried past. Her eyes lingered on the black girl and the sign. Then she looked away, pulling her collar up. She kept walking toward the heated waiting area. A man with a laptop bag did the same. Then another. Then another. The girl had become part of the urban landscape, just another discarded thing that belonged to the city night. Down the block, the rumble of a heavy V-twin engine echoed off the brick buildings. The sound grew deeply resonant, then cut off. A moment later, heavy boots crunched over the salt and grit on the sidewalk. Heavy steps. Deliberate. The sound of someone who owned the space he occupied. A man in a distressed black leather vest walked toward the bench. Patches covered the back of his vest, identifying him as a member of a motorcycle club that most decent folks locked their car doors around. His face was partially obscured by a thick, graying beard and a knit cap. His eyes were steel-colored, scanning the terminal the way a soldier scans a perimeter. He stopped a few feet from the bench. His gaze moved from the girl's bare legs to the cardboard sign, then back to her face. His jaw tightened, the muscles bunching beneath his beard. The girl's small hand twitched against the metal bench. Her eyelids fluttered but remained shut. She had heard the heavy boots. She had felt the looming presence of a stranger, but she did not move. She did not cry out. She had learned that making noise only invited pain. She had learned that adults who stopped were rarely there to help. The biker stepped closer. Then he knelt on the freezing concrete. The cold seeped through his denim jeans instantly. He didn't flinch. He didn't stand. He stayed low, studying her face. The pale, purple tint on her lips against her dark skin. The shallow, jagged rise and fall of her chest. The way her fingers curled like she was trying to grip a hand that wasn't there. He looked at the sign again. No one's child. 3 words scrawled by a coward. 3 words that meant someone had discarded her here with intent. His hand moved toward her shoulder. Then it stopped. He held it there, hovering just above the thin floral fabric. He knew the optics. A man like him. Large, tattooed, rough, reaching for a little black girl alone in the dark. He knew what the world would think. He knew what the headlines would imply. Behind him, the terminal doors slid open. A transit worker in a neon vest stepped out to smoke. He looked at the bench. He looked at the biker kneeling on the ground. His eyes darted to the girl, then to the sign. For a hesitant moment, he stood there. Then he turned and walked back inside without a word. The doors slid shut. Somewhere nearby, a city bus hissed its air brakes. The girl's chest hitched, a slower breath this time. Her lips parted, but the air was too cold for sound. The biker exhaled. His breath plumed like dragon smoke in the frigid air. His hand stayed where it was, suspended between salvation and accusation. One touch could save her life. One touch could also destroy everything he had maintained. His freedom, his club's standing, his fragile peace. He looked at her face again. The gray pallor was spreading, stealing the warmth from her cheeks. She was running out of time. His fingers trembled slightly, not from the cold. He had 5 seconds to decide what kind of man he was. Maya Jackson walked home from school the same route she always took, down 4th Street, past the bodega, across the pedestrian bridge, and up the stairs to the apartment above the dry cleaners. She was 7 years old. She carried a backpack that was bright pink and heavy with library books. Her sneakers were scuffed at the toes but double-knotted. The apartment above the cleaners was cramped. One window looked out over the alley. A mattress sat on the floor with a quilt her mother had sewn by hand. The walls were taped with drawings, stick figures with big afros and bright smiles, a yellow sun in every corner. A house with a garden that existed only in Maya's imagination. Her mother's name was Elena. Elena Jackson was 29 years old. She worked double shifts at a diner called The Skillet, 4 miles away. She left before dawn. She came home after dusk. Most days, Maya only saw her for an hour before sleep took them both. Elena kissed Maya's forehead every night and whispered the same thing. "You are my heart walking outside my body." Maya believed her. She had to. There was no father. There had never been one. Not really. He vanished before Maya was born. Elena never spoke his name. Maya learned that asking made her mother's eyes sad. There was no extended family. No aunties, no cousins, no grandmothers sending birthday cards. It was just the two of them living above the smell of steam and chemicals that never quite left their clothes. But there was Mrs. Gable. She lived in 4B. She was 73 years old, a retired nurse with arthritic hands and a fierce spirit. She watched Maya every afternoon for free because she saw herself in the lonely little girl. Mrs. Gable taught Maya how to play dominoes. She let her watch old sitcoms on a TV that required tinfoil on the antenna. She made grilled cheese with extra butter because Maya loved the crunch. Maya knew the rules. Elena had drilled them into her. Do not open the door for anyone. Do not talk to strangers. Walk straight home. If something feels wrong, run to Mrs. Gable's door and kick it until she opens. These were not suggestions. These were the commandments of survival. In a neighborhood like Cedar Point, with rent due and no safety net, the rules were the only shield Maya had. But there was something Elena hadn't told her. Something Elena prayed would stay buried. 2 years ago, Elena had a boyfriend. His name was Carl Vance. He was charming, well-dressed, and smiled in a way that made you feel chosen. At first, he was perfect. He brought groceries. He fixed the broken radiator. He told Elena she was a queen who deserved a palace. Then the mask slipped. He never hit her, he never shouted, but he monitored. He timed her shifts. He checked her phone. He asked why she wore that lipstick, who she laughed with, why she was 5 minutes late. He despised when Maya was around. He said the girl sucked all the air out of the room. He said Elena would never truly be his as long as the baggage was there. Elena ended it. She put his clothes in a box and changed the locks. For weeks, he sat in his car across the street, just watching the dry cleaners. Then one day, he was gone. That was 2 years ago. Elena told herself he had found a new target. She told herself the nightmare was over. She told herself Maya was safe. She was wrong. Carl Vance had returned to Cedar Point 3 weeks ago. He hadn't knocked on Elena's door. He hadn't texted. He hadn't made a scene. He had simply slid back into the cracks of their lives, quiet as a virus. He watched Elena take the bus to work. He watched her trudge home. He watched the window above the dry cleaners. And he watched Maya. The girl walked home from school every day at 3:15. She crossed the same bridge. She stopped at the same corner store. She checked traffic just like Elena taught her. She never noticed the charcoal sedan parked near the alley entrance. She never noticed the man sitting inside, his face shadowed by a baseball cap. She never noticed that he had been there for 3 consecutive days. At the same time, in the same spot, watching her with eyes devoid of empathy, the walk signal lit up. Maya stepped off the curb. Her pink backpack swayed. Her sneakers slapped the asphalt. Behind her, the man in the sedan didn't move. He didn't follow. Not yet. But the plan was already in motion. Maya Jackson was the leverage. She was the weapon he would use to break Elena. And if Elena wouldn't come crawling back, he would take the one thing she lived for. Maya turned the corner. The sedan's engine remained silent. Carl Vance smiled, a cold, tight expression that didn't reach his eyes. Carl sat in the parking lot of the Skillet Diner. Engine off, gaze fixed on the plate glass window. Inside, Elena moved between booths with a coffee pot. She smiled at a regular, an older man reading a newspaper. The man made a joke. She laughed, throwing her head back. Carl's hand squeezed the steering wheel until the leather creaked. The man at the table smiled back. Elena refilled his mug. She stayed a second too long. Carl's jaw clenched so hard a headache began to throb behind his eyes. He had been stalking her for 19 days. 19 days of fast food wrappers, sleeping in his car, and tracking the minutes Elena spent away from him. He told himself he was just protecting her, just making sure she hadn't ruined her life. She hadn't ruined it. She looked radiant, tired, yes, but free, giving pieces of her light to strangers. Carl was 34. He hadn't held a job in a year. The studio apartment he rented smelled of stale beer and desperation. He ate garbage and drank vodka to silence the noise in his head. He wasn't a monster. That's what he told the rearview mirror. He had tried to love Elena. He had fixed her radiator. He had bought food. He had offered to take care of her. And she treated him like trash. 2 years. 2 years of humiliation. 2 years of imagining what he would say if he saw her. He had rewritten their history until he was the martyr, and she was the villain. In his version, he gave everything. She took it and left. She chose the kid over him, the kid that wasn't his, the kid that looked at him with big, judging eyes, the kid that made him feel small. Elena didn't understand. She never appreciated his sacrifice. Inside the diner, the man stood up, left cash, and walked out. Elena watched him go, still smiling. Carl's chest felt like it was filled with broken glass. She had forgotten him. She was happy, and Carl was rotting in a cold car. He closed his eyes. He tried to count backward from 10, a trick a court-ordered counselor taught him. It didn't work. The rage was a living thing. He opened his eyes. Elena was wiping down a table, humming to herself. She looked like she had never been afraid of him. Carl started the car. He didn't have a destination. He just drove past the dry cleaners, past the school, past the corner where he had parked for 3 days. Maya. The name tasted like bile. He remembered how she used to shrink away from him. She had turned Elena against him. That was the fact. That was the narrative he clung to. He pulled into the motel lot on the outskirts of the city. He sat there, staring at the peeling paint on door number 12. His hands shook. The vodka from lunch had worn off. He reached into the back seat and grabbed a piece of cardboard he'd cut from a packing box. He stared at it. He took a thick black marker from the glove box. He wrote 3 words. He pressed down hard, the tip squeaking against the cardboard. No one's child. He didn't have every step mapped out. But he knew the end game. Elena needed to feel the void. She needed to know the panic of total loss. Carl folded the cardboard and tossed it in the trunk, next to a roll of duct tape and a heavy wool blanket. Tomorrow, Elena would learn that actions have consequences. Jack's iron teller gripped the handlebars of his Harley-Davidson, staring into the swirling darkness of the highway. The headlight carved a cone through the night, illuminating nothing but grit and wind-blown trash. His fuel light had been glowing for 20 miles. He needed a pump, or he'd be pushing 800 pounds of steel. The club meeting was in Gary, Indiana. His brothers were there, probably drinking warm beer in the clubhouse, escaping the wind. Hawk was supposed to be there. He was probably holding court, quiet and terrifying, demanding respect without raising his voice. Instead, Jax was riding solo through the outskirts of Chicago at 11 p.m., hunting for a gas station that hadn't been boarded up. They called him Iron because he never broke. He took the hits and kept standing. His face was a map of scars and sun damage. His eyes saw everything but gave away nothing. He was 47. He had been riding since he was 17. The club was his blood now. There had been another life once. A wife named Maria, a daughter named Sophie, a bungalow with a porch swing and a small garden. He used to push Sophie on that swing until she squealed for him to stop. She was 5 when she vanished. Jax pulled into the desolate bus terminal lot. A single gas pump stood under a flickering halogen light. He killed the engine and sat, letting the silence ring in his ears. The wind whipped around him. He didn't think about Sophie often. He couldn't afford to. The grief was a black hole. If he got too close, he wouldn't come back. But on freezing nights like this, the ghosts walked with him. He had been in the hardware store for 5 minutes. He checked the time when he walked in. He grabbed light bulbs and a pack of batteries. He paid cash. He walked out and stopped dead on the sidewalk. The stroller was there. The strap was unbuckled. Sophie was gone. 3 days. That was the duration of the search. 3 days of screaming her name, of tearing the city apart, of begging a god he ignored to cut him a deal. They found her in a storm drain 5 miles away. Alive, but broken, shattered. She never spoke a complete sentence again. She stopped eating. She looked through people, not at them. The doctors spoke of trauma and time. Jax nodded, but he knew. 2 years later, Sophie passed away in her sleep, her heart simply too tired to keep beating. Maria couldn't look at Jax without seeing the failure. The divorce was a formality. Jax sold the bungalow and bought the bike. The club took him in. His brothers gave him a code. Protect those who can't protect themselves. It wasn't altruism. It was penance. Jax climbed off the bike and walked toward the pump. His boots crunched on the gravel. He was unscrewing the gas cap when he saw her. A small shape on a bench, curled tight, dark skin ashy with cold. A sign beside her. He froze. His chest seized up, his hands balled into fists in his leather gloves. She looked like Sophie. Different skin, different hair, but the same smallness. The same stillness of a child who has given up. Jax abandoned the pump. He walked closer. He read the sign. No one's child. His teeth ground together. He knelt. The cold bit him. He didn't care. The girl's hand twitched. She knew he was there. She was terrified, but paralyzed by the cold and fear. Jax stared at her face, the gray tint, the shallow breaths. He knew the risk. A big biker touching a little girl? He'd be lucky if the cops didn't shoot him on sight. But he knew the alternative. He would be the man who walked away again. He would be the man who let a child freeze. His hand hovered. The wind screamed. Jax touched the girl's shoulder. The floral dress was stiff with cold. She flinched violently, but her eyes didn't open. She was fading. He made the choice instantly. He unzipped his leather vest, then the thick hoodie underneath. He stripped the hoodie off, the cold hitting his flannel shirt like a knife. He didn't feel it. He wrapped the thick, fleece-lined hoodie around the girl, tucking it under her legs, pulling the hood over her braids. She was tiny. The hoodie engulfed her. Jax scooped her up. She was light, dangerously light. Her head lolled against his chest. Her eyes cracked open, brown, glassy, filled with a heartbreaking mix of terror and pleading. Her lips formed a shape, but no sound emerged. She went limp. Jax turned toward the terminal building. The lights inside were fluorescent and harsh. Jax kicked the door with his boot. It flew open. The heat rushed out. The transit worker jumped, dropping his phone. He was young, scrawny. He looked at Jax's beard, the patches, the girl in his arms. He reached for the panic button. Jax barked, "Don't!" He kept his voice low but commanded the room. "Found her outside. She's hypothermic. Call 911. The worker hesitated. He saw a biker. He saw a threat. Jax stepped forward, eyes blazing. "Call them, now!" The worker scrambled for the landline. His hands shook as he dialed. He stammered out the address. Jax bypassed him and laid the girl on a plastic bench near the radiator. He kept the hoodie wrapped tight. He checked her pulse. Thready. Weak. He noticed the cardboard sign still clutched in her hand. He hadn't realized she was holding it. He pried it loose. "No one's child." Jax read it, and a dark, dangerous rage settled in his gut. This was staged. This was a message. Someone put her there to be found like trash. This wasn't a mistake. This was evil. Sirens wailed in the distance. Blue lights flashed against the frosted glass. Help was coming. She would live. But Jax knew the law only went so far. The monster who did this was walking free. He looked at the girl. Her breathing was evening out in the warmth. He made a silent vow. He didn't know her name. But he knew the man who did this was going to pay. The ambulance arrived in a blur of activity. Paramedics swarmed. Jax stepped back, fading into the corner. He watched them load her onto the gurney. "Core temp is dropping! Let's move!" one shouted. As they wheeled her out, Maya's eyes opened. She looked frantically around until she found Jax. She reached a hand out from the blankets. Then the doors closed. A patrol car screeched up. Officer Miller, a rookie, stepped out. He approached Jax warily. "You the one who found her?" Jax nodded. "ID?" Jax handed it over. Miller ran it. Clean, mostly. Jax explained the scene. The bench, the sign. Miller looked at the cardboard Jax had handed over. His face hardened. "Someone left a kid out there with this?" Jax nodded. "You find him," Jax said, his voice like gravel. "Or I will." At Mercy General, doctors worked on Maya. Heated blankets, IV fluids. By midnight, she was stable. A social worker named Brenda sat by her bed. "Honey, what's your name?" Maya whispered. "Maya." "Do you know where your mom is?" Maya stared at the ceiling. He said she didn't want me anymore. Back at the station, Miller ran the prints from the cardboard. A hit. Carl Vance. Prior for stalking, restraining order filed by Elena Jackson. Miller called it in. They found Elena's apartment empty. TV on, phone on the table. A note next to it. No one's child. Elena Jackson was freezing at the rail yard, 5 miles away. She had been standing there for 2 hours, shivering, terrifyingly alone. Carl had texted her. "Meet me at the old yards. Alone, or the girl is gone." She waited. And waited. She didn't know that Carl had watched her arrive, laughed, and then driven away to a motel to drink. He wanted her to suffer. When the police cruisers rolled into the rail yard, lights flashing, Elena screamed. She thought they were coming to tell her Maya was dead. Officer Miller stepped out. "Ms. Jackson, we found her. She's at Mercy General. She's alive." Elena collapsed into the snow. Jax stood outside the hospital ER entrance. He hadn't left. He leaned against his bike, smoking a cigarette. He saw the police car arrive. He saw a woman, Elena, run out, disheveled, crying, sprinting toward the doors. He watched her go inside. He should leave. His job was done, but he pulled his phone out. He dialed Hawk. "Yeah?" Hawk's voice was deep. "It's Jax. I need a favor, a big one." He told Hawk everything. The girl, the sign, the name the cop mentioned over the radio. Carl Vance. Hawk was silent. Then, "Where is he?" "We find him," Jack said. "We'll be there in an hour." The Iron Saints didn't use police scanners. They used the streets. They hit the bars, the strip clubs, the cheap motels. They asked the bartenders, the bouncers, the dealers. A gray sedan. A nervous guy. Carl. By 3:20 a.m., they found the car at the Lakeside Inn. Jax parked his bike across the street. 6 other bikes rumbled up behind him. Hawk got off his custom chopper. He nodded at Jax. "Police are on their way," Hawk said. "We just watch." "We make sure he doesn't run," Jax corrected. Inside the motel room, Carl Vance woke up to the sound of a bullhorn. "Carl Vance, come out with your hands up." He peeked through the curtains. Police everywhere, and behind them, a line of bikers standing like statues in the darkness. Carl pissed himself. He surrendered without a fight. As they walked him to the cruiser, he looked up. He saw the bikers. He saw Jax. The man with the beard stared right through him. Carl looked away, trembling. Elena sat by Maya's bed. Maya was sleeping, color returning to her cheeks. A nurse walked in. "There's a man outside, says he found her. Won't come in, just asked if she's okay." Elena stood up. She walked out to the parking lot. It was dawn. The sun was breaking over the skyline. Jax was putting on his helmet. "Wait!" Elena called out. Jax froze. He turned. Elena ran to him. She didn't care about the leather, the patches, the scary look. She grabbed his hand. "You saved her." Jax looked down, uncomfortable. "Just did what needed doing." Oh, I. "You were the only one," she wept. "Everyone else walked by." Jax shrugged. "I've got a daughter, had one. She would have been Maya's age." Elena squeezed his hand. "Thank you." Jax reached into his pocket. He pulled out a small pin. It was a silver wing, a support pin for the club. "Give this to her. Tell her she's got angels." Months later, the trial was swift. The no one's child sign was the nail in the coffin. Carl got 20 years. Maya healed. The nightmares faded. She drew pictures now. Motorcycles with wings. 1 year later, a park in Cedar Point. Community Safety Day. Jax stood on a stage. He hated speeches, but Elena had asked. "I'm not a hero," Jax grumbled into the mic. The crowd laughed nervously. "I'm just a guy who stopped. That's all it takes. You see something, you stop. You don't look away." Maya ran up on stage. She was wearing the silver wing pin on her dress. She hugged Jax's leg. The big biker patted her head awkwardly, but he smiled. After the speech, a woman approached Jax. She was young, black, holding a little boy's hand. Her eye was bruised, covered poorly with makeup. "I heard your story," she whispered. "My name is Chloe. This is Liam. We need help." Jax looked at her. He looked at the scared boy. He looked over at Elena, who was organizing pamphlets. "Elena," Jax called. Elena came over. She saw Chloe's eye. She understood. "We got you," Elena said, taking Chloe's hand. Jax knelt down to Liam. "You like bikes, kid?" Liam nodded shyly. "Come on, I'll show you the Harley." Jax watched them. He thought of Sophie. He thought of the cold night at the terminal. He realized he hadn't just saved Maya. He had saved himself. The road was long, but he wasn't riding alone anymore. The snow descended in heavy, suffocating curtains over the Northwood Junction platform. It was the kind of cold that bypassed the skin and settled deep into the marrow. The kind of November night that forced commuters to tuck their chins into their scarves, eyes fixed on the concrete, marching toward their cars. On a weathered wooden bench at the desolate end of the platform, a small shape lay curled in a fetal ball. She was a black girl, perhaps 7 years old. Her dress was a flimsy thing, bright yellow, the fabric meant for a Sunday church service in July, not for this biting freeze. Her legs were bare against the frosted wood. The rich, warm brown of her skin had taken on a gray, ashen dullness. Her lips were a dark, bruised purple. Beside her lay a piece of jagged cardboard. Someone had scrawled on it with a thick black marker. The words read, "No one's child." Her eyes were squeezed shut, but her body vibrated with rapid, ceaseless shivers. She wasn't asleep. She was listening. She had been listening for what felt like hours to the rhythm of boots crunching on the snow behind her, sneakers, heels, the rolling thunder of luggage wheels. Some footsteps slowed, some hesitated, but none of them stopped. A woman in a wool trench coat glanced at the bench as she hurried past. Her gaze flickered over the black girl and the sign. Then, she looked straight ahead, accelerating toward the heated sanctuary of the station lobby. A businessman with a leather satchel did the same, then a teenager with headphones. The girl had become part of the scenery, just another piece of debris discarded in the night. Down the service road, the deep growl of a V-twin engine cut through the wind. The sound swelled, then died abruptly. A minute later, heavy boots broke the crust of the snow. Deliberate steps, heavy, the gait of a man who refused to rush. A man in a distressed black leather vest walked toward the bench. The rockers on his back identified him as a member of a motorcycle club that most decent folks locked their car doors to avoid. His face was obscured by a thick neck gaiter. His eyes were flinty, scanning the platform with the practiced wariness of a predator scanning for threats. He halted 3 feet from the bench. His gaze traveled from the girl's frozen toes to the cardboard sign, then settled on her face. His jaw muscles bunched beneath the gaiter. The girl's fingers twitched against the wood. Her eyelids fluttered but remained closed. She had heard the heavy boots. She sensed the looming presence of the stranger, but she didn't flinch. She didn't cry out. She had learned that crying made the bad things happen faster. She had learned that adults who stopped were rarely there to help. The biker stepped closer. Then, he dropped to one knee in the slush. The wet cold soaked into his denim instantly. He didn't shift. He didn't stand. He stayed low, examining her. The gray cast to her skin, the shallow, desperate hitch of her chest, the way her small hand was clenched as if holding on to a lifeline that had been severed. He looked at the sign again. No one's child. 3 words written by a coward. 3 words that declared she had been discarded like trash. His hand drifted toward her shoulder. Then it froze. He hovered there, his gloved hand inches from the yellow fabric. He knew the optics. A man like him, large, imposing, patched, reaching for a little black girl alone in the dark. He knew the assumptions people would make. He knew the accusations that would fly. Behind him, the station doors hissed open. A janitor in a navy jumpsuit stepped out to smoke. He spotted the bench. He spotted the biker kneeling in the drift. His eyes darted to the girl, then the sign. He hesitated, cigarette halfway to his mouth. Then he spun around and retreated inside, the lock clicking audibly. Far off, a freight train whistle screamed, lonely and mournful. The girl's chest heaved, a slower rhythm now, Her lips parted, but the scream died in her throat. The biker exhaled. His breath plumed like dragon smoke in the frigid air. His hand remained suspended between salvation and disaster. One touch could save her. One touch could also destroy the fragile life he had rebuilt. His parole, his standing, his freedom. He studied her face again. The gray was deepening, the purple of her lips turning almost black. She was fading. His fingers trembled. Not from the chill. He had 5 seconds to decide what kind of man occupied his skin. Maya Jackson walked home from school the same route every day, down Chestnut Avenue, past the bodega, across the old rail lines, and up the fire escape of the brick building next to the laundromat. She was 7 years old. She lugged a backpack that thumped against her lower back. Her sneakers were scuffed, but laced tight. The apartment above the laundromat was cramped. One window looked out over the alley. A mattress sat on the floor, covered in a quilt her mother Elena had bought at a yard sale. The walls were a gallery of crayon art, stick figures with braids, a giant yellow sun in every sketch. A house with a white picket fence that existed only in Maya's imagination. Her mother's name was Elena. Elena Jackson was 28. She worked double shifts at a diner called The Skillet, 4 miles away. She left before the streetlights turned off. She returned after they buzzed back on. Most days, Maya only saw her for 40 minutes before sleep took them both. Elena kissed Maya's forehead every night and whispered the mantra. "You are my heart, Maya. You are the strongest thing I know." Maya believed her. She had to. There was no father. Not really. He had vanished before Maya took her first breath. Elena never spoke his name. Maya learned that asking brought a shadow to her mother's eyes. There was no sprawling family tree, no grandmother with hard candies, no uncles with birthday cash. It was just the two of them, floating above the rumble of washing machines and the scent of bleach. But there was Ms. Henderson. She lived in 4B. She was 75, with silver dreadlocks and hands that shook when she poured lemonade. She watched Maya every afternoon, refusing payment because she remembered the ache of being young and unsupported. Ms. Henderson taught Maya how to play gin rummy. She let her watch black and white movies on a TV that required tinfoil on the antenna. She made peanut butter toast exactly the way Maya liked it. Maya knew the code. Elena had drilled it into her until it was muscle memory. Do not open the door for anyone. Do not speak to strangers. Walk straight home. If the air feels wrong, run to Ms. Henderson and knock 3 times. These weren't suggestions. They were the commandments of survival. In a neighborhood like Northwood, with no safety net, the code was the only shield Maya had. But there was a secret Elena hadn't shared. A variable she hoped had been solved. 2 years ago, Elena had a boyfriend. His name was Caleb Vance. He was charming, with a smile that disarmed waitresses and a voice like velvet. At first, he was a savior. He bought groceries. He fixed the radiator. He told Elena she was a queen stuck in a pauper's life. Then the mask slipped. He didn't hit her. He didn't scream. He quietly dismantled her world. He timed her shifts. He checked her phone. He demanded to know why she smiled at the mailman. He loathed when Maya was in the room. He called the child baggage. He said Elena would never truly be his as long as the girl was breathing their air. Elena cut the cord. She threw his clothes on the street. She changed the locks and blocked his number. For weeks, he sat in his car across from the laundromat, a silhouette in the dark. Then, he vanished. That was 2 years ago. Elena told herself the storm had passed. She told herself he had found a new fixation. She told herself Maya was untouchable. She was wrong. Caleb Vance had returned to Northwood 3 weeks ago. He hadn't kicked down the door. He hadn't sent a threatening text. He had simply returned, silent as cancer, and begun the hunt. He watched Elena trudge to the bus stop. He watched her return, exhausted. He watched the window above the laundromat. And he watched Maya. The girl walked home at 3:15 p.m. She waited at the same crosswalk. She looked left, right, left. She never saw the charcoal sedan idling in the shade of the overpass. She never saw the man behind the tinted glass. She never noticed he had been there for 3 consecutive days, watching her with unblinking reptilian patience. The walk signal chirped. Maya stepped off the curb. Her backpack swayed. Her sneakers slapped the asphalt. Behind her, the charcoal sedan remained still. He didn't follow. Not yet. The trap was already set. Maya Jackson was the lever. She was the only way to break Elena. And if Elena wouldn't break, he would take the one piece of her soul she couldn't survive losing. Maya turned the corner. The sedan sat silent. Caleb Vance smiled for the first time in months. Caleb Vance sat in the parking lot of the Skillet, engine cold, eyes fixed on the glass frontage. Inside, Elena moved between booths, a coffee pot an extension of her arm. She smiled at a regular at the counter. The man made a joke. She laughed, throwing her head back. Caleb's knuckles turned white on the steering wheel. The man leaned in. Elena poured him a fresh cup. She stayed a second too long. Caleb's jaw ached from the pressure of his clench. He had been watching for 19 days. 19 days of sleeping in his car, eating jerky, fueling his hatred. He told himself it was just a check-in, just seeing if she was miserable without him. She wasn't miserable. She was tired, yes, but she was radiant. She was giving that light to strangers. Caleb was 35. He hadn't held a job in a year. The room he rented by the highway smelled of stale beer and regret. He wasn't a villain. That's what he whispered to the dashboard. He had tried to save her. He had tried to be a father to that brat. He had fixed the radiator, and she had discarded him like a wrapper. 2 years. 2 years of silence. 2 years of rewriting history until he was the martyr and she was the Judas. In his version, he gave everything. She took it and laughed. She chose the baggage over him, the child that wasn't his, the child with the eyes that judged him. Inside the diner, the man left a tip and walked out. Elena watched him go, still smiling. Caleb's chest felt like it was filled with broken glass. She had erased him. She was happy, and Caleb was rotting in a cold car. He closed his eyes. He breathed through his nose. The rage was a living thing now, coiling in his gut. He looked at the diner one last time. Elena was wiping the counter, humming. Caleb put the car in gear. He drove past the bodega, past the rail lines, past the spot where Maya waited for the light. Maya. The name tasted like bile. She had poisoned the well. He pulled into the motel lot. He sat for an hour, staring at the peeling paint of his door. He reached into the back seat and grabbed a piece of cardboard from a case of beer. He took a thick marker from the glove box. He wrote 3 words. No one's child. He didn't have a manifesto. He didn't have an end game. He just knew one thing. Elena needed to learn the definition of loss. She needed to feel the void he felt every morning. Caleb tossed the sign into the trunk next to a roll of duct tape and a wool blanket. Tomorrow, the lesson would begin. Elias Thorne gripped the ape hangers of his cruiser, staring into the white void of the highway. The headlight carved a cone through the snow. His fuel light had been screaming for 20 miles. He needed a pump, or he'd be hiking. The club meet was in Detroit. His brothers were likely already 3 beers deep, thawing out. Rook, his road name, was supposed to be there. Instead, he was riding through Northwood Junction at 11 p.m., hunting for high octane. They called him Rook because he was the castle. He didn't move unless forced. He was defensive. He protected the king. His face was a road map of hard miles. He was 47. He had been patching for 20 years. The Iron Sentinels were his kin, the only kin left. There had been a before. A wife named Claire, a daughter named Sophie, a bungalow with a porch swing. Sophie was 6 when she vanished. Elias pulled into the train station lot. The single pump was illuminated by a flickering halogen. He killed the motor and let the silence rush in. He didn't think about Sophie often. He had built walls to keep those ghosts at bay. But the snow brought them back. He remembered the grocery store. He remembered turning his back to grab a carton of eggs. He remembered turning back around to an empty aisle. 4 days. That's how long it took. They found her in a storm drain. Alive, but shattered. She never spoke again. Not really. She faded. 2 years later, her heart just stopped. The coroner said it was a defect. Elias knew she had died of fear. Claire left a month later. Elias hit the road and never turned back. The club gave him structure. They gave him a code. Protect the weak. It wasn't just a slogan on a patch. It was penance. Elias dismounted and stomped towards the pump. Halfway across the lot, he saw it. The yellow blur on the bench. He stopped. His breath hitched. It looked like Sophie, not the face. Sophie had been pale and freckled. But the size, the abandonment, the posture of a thing that had given up. Elias walked closer. He read the sign. No one's child. The rage hit him so hard he saw stars. He knelt. The cold bit through his jeans. Maya's fingers twitched. She knew he was there. Elias stared at the gray skin, the purple lips. He knew the risks. A white biker, a black child, a dark night. The narrative wrote itself, but he also knew the alternative. He would be the man who walked past. He would be the monster he hunted. His hand hovered. The snow swirled. Elias made his choice. He unzipped his leather vest. He stripped off his heavy riding jacket. The wind cut through his flannel shirt like a razor. He didn't flinch. He wrapped the heavy leather around the girl, tucking the collar under her chin. She was weightless. He scooped her up, the leather engulfing her. Her head lolled against his chest. Her eyes cracked open, dark brown, terrified, glassy. Her lips moved. No sound. He turned toward the station. The lights were on. Elias kicked the door open. The heat hit him. The janitor behind the ticket counter jumped. He was young, skinny, eyes wide. He looked at Elias's patch. He looked at the bundle in his arms. He reached for the phone. Elias held up a hand. I found her on the bench. She's hypothermic. Call 911. The kid hesitated. He saw the skull patch. He saw the danger. Call them, Elias barked. The command cracked like a whip. The kid dialed, stammering. Elias laid Maya on a bench near the radiator. He kept the jacket tight around her. He found the cardboard sign tucked under her arm. He pulled it out. No one's child. Elias crushed the edge of the cardboard. This was calculated. This was evil. Sirens wailed in the distance. Blue and red washed over the snow. Help was coming. But Elias knew the predator was still out there. He looked at Maya. She was breathing. He made a vow then, silent and ironclad. The person who wrote that sign would pay. The paramedics burst in. They swarmed Maya. Elias stepped back into the shadows. He watched them load her onto the gurney. As they wheeled her out, a deputy entered. Name tag, Reynolds. Young, jaw set. He zeroed in on Elias. You the one who found her? Yeah. Let me see some ID. Elias handed over his license slowly. Reynolds ran it. He asked questions. Elias answered. He told him about the sign. Reynolds bagged it. His demeanor changed from suspicion to grim determination. At the county hospital, They warmed Maya's blood. By midnight, she was stable. A social worker sat by her bed. Maya whispered one sentence. The car was gray, then the cold. Reynolds ran the prints from the cardboard. A hit. Caleb Vance. Prior domestic disputes. Stalking orders filed by Elena Jackson. Reynolds radioed dispatch. He drove to the apartment above the laundromat. The door was ajar. TV on. Coffee cold. A note on the table. No one's child. Reynolds grabbed his radio. Suspect is Caleb Vance. He has the mother. Repeat, he has the mother. At the skillet, Elena had frozen. Caleb had walked in, ordered a coffee, and whispered, "Go home, Elena. Check on the baggage." She ran. She found the empty room. She found the note. She ran to the rail yards because a text message told her to. Come alone, or she dies. Caleb was waiting by a rusted boxcar. He gloated. He monologued about his pain. He didn't know Maya was warm. He didn't know Elias Rook had found her. Elias stood outside the station. He called his club president Bear. I found a girl. Someone left her to freeze. It was purposeful. Where are you? Bear asked. Northwood. We roll in 2 hours. 7 bikes thundered into Northwood. They parked at the all-night diner. Gray-bearded men, veterans. They convened with Elias. They wouldn't interfere with the law, but they would tighten the net. Reynolds found Elena at the rail yard. Caleb had fled minutes before the sirens screamed. They told Elena her daughter was alive. She collapsed. Elena sprinted through the hospital corridors. She burst into the room. Maya was there. Alive. Elena held her, sobbing until her throat was raw. She saw the leather jacket on the chair. Who? She asked. A biker, the nurse said. He brought her in, left without a name. Elena touched the worn leather. It smelled of gasoline and snow. Elias sat on his bike in the parking lot. He watched the detectives arrive. He watched them go inside. He knew the hunt was on. The detectives, Warren and Oakes, interviewed Elena. She gave them everything. The gray sedan, the old haunts, the motel by the highway, the Iron Sentinels were already hunting. They checked the bars. They checked the gas stations. They found the trail, a gray sedan heading for the Motor Inn. Elias rode ahead. He found the car in front of room 12. He killed his engine and waited in the dark. He could have kicked the door. He could have ended it. But he let the law work. Sheriff's deputies swarmed the lot. They kicked in the door of room 12. Caleb was in bed, drunk. He screamed as they cuffed him. He was dragged out. He looked across the lot. He saw a man on a motorcycle, watching from the shadows. The man didn't move. He just stared. Caleb felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. Elias watched the cruiser drive away. It was done. He received a text from Bear. The mother wants to meet you. Elias met Elena in the hospital lobby the next morning. He had cleaned up. Flannel shirt, no vest. Elena ran to him. She hugged him, burying her face in his chest. Thank you, she wept. You were the only one who stopped. I did what a man is supposed to do, Elias said gruffly. He gave Elena a small enamel pin, a shield with a rook chess piece on it. For Maya, tell her she's not alone. Months later, the trial was swift. The cardboard sign was the nail in the coffin. Caleb Vance got 20 years. Elena became a force. She worked with the Iron Sentinels to organize safety workshops, Community Protection Day. 1 year later, a park in Northwood, sun shining. Elias stood at a microphone. He hated speeches. I'm not a hero, he grunted. I just stopped. Dozens didn't. You have to look. You have to see the kids who are invisible. Maya ran up on stage. She was healthy. Her braids swung as she moved. She hugged Elias. She wore the rook pin on her collar. After the speech, a woman approached Elias. She was trembling. A small boy hid behind her leg. My name is Monica, she whispered. I need help. I don't know how to leave him. Elias looked at her. He looked at the boy, Leo. He signaled for Elena. We got you, Elias said. You aren't alone. Maya Jackson had been invisible, a black girl on a bench, disregarded by a world that moved too fast. But one man stopped, and because he stopped, a mother was saved, a predator was caged, a community woke up. The choice is always there, to walk past or to kneel down, to look away or to pay attention. Elias Thorne fired up his bike. The road was open. He wasn't running anymore. He was riding toward something.